The Zodiac started as bookkeeping, not as mysticism and not as a picture of anything. It began as a filing problem, solved by people who had been writing down the sky for 6 centuries. Start in Babylon with a habit rather than a belief. For 600 years, scribes there wrote down what the sky did. Night after night, the moon's position, the planets, an eclipse when one came. These tablets are called the astronomical diaries. The earliest dated one is from 652 before the Common Era. The latest is from 61. Several hundred of them survive, most in the British Museum. And they are not only astronomy. The same tablet records the level of the Euphrates. It records the price of barley and of wool. It records who had died and who had arrived in the city. So this was a ledger. Somebody was keeping accounts, and the sky was one column in them. 600 years is easy to say and hard to feel. So set against something. The diaries were already old when Alexander walked into Babylon. They were still being written when Rome was a republic. Put it another way, the record runs longer than the gap between us and Columbus. And it is continuous. Not a few famous observations kept because somebody thought them important. A routine carried out by salaried men on ordinary nights when nothing happened. That part is genuinely remarkable, and no historian disputes it. Whatever anyone thinks of what came out of Babylon, the record itself is real, dated, and in a museum. Which raises the question of what they did with it. What they did with it was arithmetic. To predict where the moon would be next month, you need to say where it is now. As a number. And a number needs a scale to sit on. The sky does not come with one. So they made one. Around the end of the 5th century before the Common Era, Babylonian astronomers cut the sun's path into 12 equal parts. Each part 30 degrees wide. 12 times 30 closes the circle. Why 12 and why 30? Because the calendar was already built on those numbers. The Babylonian schematic year had 12 months, and each month had 30 days. So the zodiac is the calendar, turned sideways and laid on the sky. A month of the year became a segment of the circle. The units match because they were the same units. That is the whole invention. Something was there before the 12, and it was not tidy. The oldest Babylonian star text is called Mul-Apin. It was compiled around 1000 before the Common Era. It lists the constellations lying in the path of the moon. There are 17 of them. Not 12, but 17 of every size, because they are things people saw rather than divisions anyone chose. Some are enormous. Orion is on that list, and so are Perseus and Auriga. You cannot do arithmetic on 17 shapes of different widths. There is no way to say the moon is halfway through one of them and mean anything by it. So the 17 were not corrected. They were replaced. The constellations stayed in the sky, and the numbers moved to a grid with nothing to do with them. Which is the step everyone skips. Now the headline that comes back every few years. The zodiac is wrong, it says. There are 13 constellations, and Ophiuchus is the missing sign. The story attached to it is that Babylon found 13 and dropped 1. That did not happen, and the dates say why. Constellations had no edges until 1928. A Belgian astronomer named Delport drew the boundaries, and the International Astronomical Union adopted them. Before that, a constellation was a picture, not a region. Under those boundaries, the sun's path clips 13 of them. True. And 2,500 years too late to be a Babylonian decision. Then measure the 13. Virgo takes 44 degrees of the circle. Scorpius takes 7, 6 to 1 on a scale meant to be even. Which leaves the real question. How did a Babylonian filing system get to Greece? The system did not stay in Babylon. The route out is a story the Greeks told about themselves, so hold it a little loosely. Greek writers say a Babylonian priest named Berossus left the temple of Marduk for Kos. Kos is a Greek island off the coast of what is now Turkey. The date they give is around 280 before the Common Era. There he taught, and those writers credit him with bringing the material west. Historians treat that as a tidy story about an untidy process. Berossus was probably not the first. One man is rarely the whole channel. But something did move, and it moved in that century. What arrived was technique. Positions, tables, a way of writing down where a planet was on a given night. Where it landed matters, because Egypt was not a blank page. Alexandria in the last centuries, before the Common Era, held 3 traditions in one city. Babylonian arithmetic, arriving with the tables. Egyptian timekeeping, already thousands of years old. And Greek philosophy, which wanted a reason behind the numbers. Each brought something the others lacked. Babylon had the positions, and no theory of why they should matter. Egypt had a way of dividing time by the stars. The Greeks had the habit of asking what a thing meant. Horoscopic astrology comes out of that mixture in Hellenistic Egypt, and Alexandria is the likeliest place. Not one inventor, but a collision in a city built for collisions. The result was something none of the 3 had on its own. The change that mattered was who the chart was for. Babylonian celestial omens were read for the state. An eclipse meant something for the king, or for the harvest, or for the city. The sky spoke about public things to people with public responsibilities. Then it turned inward. A chart cast for the moment one ordinary person was born, and read for that person's life. The dates are worth holding. The earliest surviving horoscope for an individual is Babylonian, from 410 before the Common Era. Greek manuals for casting charts appear from the late 2nd century. So the practice starts in Babylon, and the instruction books appear in Greek. The idea crossed before Alexandria, and Alexandria is where it was written up. Take one piece of the Egyptian side and follow it. The Egyptians used 36 star groups to tell the time at night. Each one rose about 10 days after the last. Watch which is on the horizon, and you know roughly where you are in the year. They are called decans, from the Greek for 10. Now the arithmetic. 36 groups of 10 days each. That is 360. The Egyptian civil year ran on exactly that. 5 extra days at the end brought it to 365. None of this was astrology. It was a calendar and a way of telling the hour in the dark. They wrote it on the underside of coffin lids. Here is why it survived the journey. The Babylonian circle has 360 degrees. The Egyptian year had 360 days. 36 blocks of 10. The same number, in different units, reached by 2 peoples solving different problems. So when the material met in Alexandria, the decans did not have to be adjusted. 36 tens fit into 12 30s exactly. 3 decans to a sign, 10 degrees each, with nothing left over and nothing forced. That is a coincidence, and it is worth naming as one. Both systems chose round numbers near the length of a year. 60 was the Babylonian base, and 360s make a circle. The fit is real. The reason for it is arithmetic, not design. Open a chart today, and the decans are still in it. Any modern wheel can be read at 10-degree resolution. The tradition calls the first 10 degrees of a sign its first decan, and assigns each one a planet. Whatever you make of what that is supposed to mean, look at where it came from. A device for telling the time at night in Egypt 4,000 years ago. Absorbed by a Babylonian grid. Carried through Greek, then Arabic, then Latin. Printed in a chart on a screen. Nobody designed that. It accumulated. Which brings us to the man usually given the credit. Claudius Ptolemy worked in Alexandria in the 2nd century of the Common Era. He wrote the Almagest, which held the mathematical astronomy of the ancient world in one place for the next 1400 years. Then, late in life, he wrote a second book about what the positions were held to mean. 4 books, so the Greek title is Tetrabiblos. It became the most influential astrological book in the tradition that followed. Not because it contained anything new. Ptolemy did not originate the techniques in it. He inherited them from Babylonian material and from Greek astrologers before him. What he did was arrange them. He set out to show that the subject rested on principles, ordered from the physical argument down to the technique. That is an editor's contribution, and it is not a small one. An organized body of material is the kind that survives. The distinction is worth defending because it gets lost constantly. Ptolemy is routinely credited with inventing things he wrote down. Aspects, rulerships, the reading of angles. All of it is older than he is, and most of it is Babylonian in origin or Hellenistic in development. The confusion is easy to explain. His book survived, and many others did not. When one text carries a whole subject across 1,000 years, the subject starts to look like the text. Read him as the earliest complete account still standing, not as the first person to think of any of it. The book then took a route that explains a lot of the vocabulary. In the 9th century, scholars in Baghdad translated the Greek scientific corpus into Arabic, often by way of Syriac. Ptolemy went with it. For several hundred years, the serious work in this subject was done in Arabic. Then in the 12th century it came back, translated out of Arabic into Latin, largely in Toledo. Europe read Ptolemy in a Latin version of an Arabic version of the Greek. You can still hear the layers. Zodiac and horoscope are Greek. Ascendant and conjunction are Latin. Azimuth, nadir, and alidade are Arabic. So are Aldebaran, Altair, and Deneb. 3 languages in the technical terms of one subject. So that is the chain, and it is worth being clear about what it does and does not show. It does not show that any of this works. A technique can cross continents and centuries and still be wrong about people. Age is not evidence. Neither is influence. What the chain does show is that this is not folklore. It has a documented history with dated objects at every step. Clay tablets you can go and look at. Papyri with names on them. Manuscripts in 3 languages. Somebody sat down and made each decision for a reason that made sense at the time. The reasons are recoverable. That is what an origin is. 5 steps then. Clay, 6 centuries of dated observation, kept as a ledger rather than a scripture. Arithmetic, 12 equal signs of 30 degrees, borrowed straight from the calendar. An island, the technique moving west, in the 3rd century before the Common Era. A city, Alexandria, where Babylonian numbers met Egyptian timekeeping and Greek philosophy, and the birth chart appears. A book, Ptolemy, arranging what he inherited so well that it outlived everything it was arranged from. And a boundary line, drawn in 1928, misread as a Babylonian decision ever since. Next time, the wobble. The Earth's axis turns a slow circle, and it has pulled the signs away from the constellations they were named after. About 1 degree every 72 years.